Have you already seen these images?
Russia has deployed nuclear Iskander missiles in Kaliningrad.
38,000 soldiers, 55 warships and submarines.
During a Russian military exercise, these ballistic missiles were practicing an attack on Poland. They were deployed on this highway, from where they could reach cities like Warsaw and Berlin within just 3 minutes.
Нас крайне беспокоит, что вблизи России идет развертывание элементов глобальной бросыши.
Kaliningrad has been surrounded by NATO, and the US has deployed its nuclear weapons across Europe. They are pointing their guns at each other, but in Kaliningrad something odd is going on. The estimates vary, but 3 to 6% of the population is employed by the military. Over 1 million people live here, but only half live in the main city. So what about the other half? There are no more cities with more than 40,000 inhabitants, and we know that car manufacturing was their main business, contributing 52% of taxable income in 2021. But this sector imploded due to sanctions from the West. So how have people been surviving at the front line of tensions between Russia and NATO? And how much power does Russia still project into Europe? This is Kaliningrad with hindsight. So the initial reason why I wanted to make this video is because I came across these reports about these secret nuclear bases that Russia is currently renovating. Russia officially stores its nuclear weapons in just 12 locations, but they have bases that are capable of hosting nuclear weapons, including in Kaliningrad. And some of these facilities have undergone significant renovations over the past couple of months that I want to show you. But there's another side to this story that is often overlooked. Not even that long ago, there were hopes of establishing Kaliningrad as a trade hub that connects Russia to the European Union, much like how Hong Kong connected China to Western markets. I'm gonna get into all of these things and more, but first a shout out to today's sponsor, Call of War. Call of War is a free online PvP strategy game set in World War II. You get to pick your country, and from there you must build up your economy and army to lead your country to triumph. Each game can take place over the course of several weeks, and you're playing in real time against up to 100 players. I must warn you that this game isn't for everybody, because the pacing of this game provides a very calculated and strategic experience. I found that you must plan ahead and anticipate your moves and those of your opponents. This is for players who take the game seriously, and because each game can stretch out over weeks, you run into fewer pinheads who are using a battle to screw around. But it also means that the game attracts a very skilled crowd. I've warned you, but if you're up for the challenge, give it a try. Build your war machine on browser and mobile today by using my link in the pinned comment or description and get a late Christmas crate with a free Marines unit worth $25 for free. This is only valid for 30 days, so act fast. This region has been hotly contested. Until the 1940s, it was called Königsberg, and it served as the capital of East Prussia. It was one of Germany's 10 largest cities, with a thriving population of over 370,000 people. The city sat on a long, shallow lagoon, with only one narrow opening to the Baltic Sea. This created a strategic shelter for naval forces that Germany used to position troops close to the Soviet border. And Stalin wasn't too happy about this. In 1943, he spoke at a conference in Tehran to a host of Allied powers, and he expressed vividly how the Soviet Union needed year-round ports on the Baltic Sea. He spoke specifically about Königsberg, and from that moment onwards, it became a stated war aim to annex this land. The war left the city in ruins and Soviet forces took control. The German population either escaped or was expelled, and the city was renamed Kaliningrad. They now controlled this city and half of the lagoon. But most importantly, they now had control of this narrow opening with this port, which they renamed Baltic. This became the primary base of the Soviet Baltic fleet. In subsequent years, the security landscape shifted massively in favor of the Soviets. Poland and East Germany became deeply embedded in the Soviet sphere of influence and formed part of the Warsaw Pact, a military alliance that countered NATO. Kaliningrad was the westernmost outpost of the Soviet Union and was used to ensure Soviet dominance in Poland and the Baltics. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, the region's military significance declined. Germany joined NATO, and if it stayed with this, the rest of the 1990s could have been very different.
Since the end of August, Muscovites have seen their financial security collapse as the ruble tumbled, prices soared, and banks ran out of money.
Russia entered a deep economic crisis and was reinventing itself. So one of the things that happened is that the Baltic states gained independence, and with it, their economies grew remarkably. They were integrated into the European Union, which gave them access to funding and some of the wealthiest export markets in the world. This was obviously also noticed by Russian leaders, who started to look at Kaliningrad differently. The factors that contributed to Kaliningrad having such strategic military importance, like its deep water port and its proximity to Western Europe, could also be conditions for rapid economic growth. This is where the idea of a Baltic Hong Kong was popularized. Hong Kong had served to link China to Western markets, and Kaliningrad could serve to link Russia to the European Union. But in the 1990s, there was little interest from Europe. They were more concerned with integrating Germany into the European Union, and from the side of Russia, there lacked a clear strategy. They did do a couple of things, like they offered tax breaks and duty-free exports, and in the beginning, even Putin was following this line.
Мы, разумеется, заинтересованы в развитии поистине партнерских, дружеских отношений с Евросоюзом и нашими странами-соседями.
In 2005, to celebrate the 750th anniversary of Kaliningrad, Putin invited leaders from around Europe, and he appointed a governor, a person that he could control. He subsequently established a special economic zone.
Уверен, что такая богатая инфраструктура, природные возможности Калининграда, близость европейских рынков к нам и европейских рынков к российским возможностям, безусловно, будут способствовать развитию Калининградской области и самого города.
But the issue was with Putin that his priorities actually lay somewhere else. In the early years that Putin was near the head of government, NATO expanded, first to include Poland and then also the Baltics. Kaliningrad wasn't on track to becoming an economic success story. There was much crime, and the exclave was plagued by smugglers. But Putin's policies did have some effects. The value of imports drastically increased in the first years that the special economic zone was fully activated. This period saw the rise of Avtotor, which made deals with Kia, Hyundai and BMW, and Kaliningrad became a loophole for importing products cheaply from the EU into Russia. Kaliningrad's exports were dominated by two sectors: the production of TV sets and cars, which collectively made up 3/4 of all exports of that time. And while these developments could be interpreted as something positive, it wasn't great if you put it into perspective. If we compare Kaliningrad to the Baltic states, with regards to their GDP per capita, they still lagged far behind. But also with regards to their total value of their exports, and even the total value of their imports, the Baltic states had far superior results. The economic success story that they were hoping for had failed, and maybe this was something that Putin never truly intended. If you look closely at who benefited the most from these policies, it were big firms that were based in Moscow. And Putin's aim in those early years was to centralize all power in Moscow, so it behooved him to have Kaliningrad depend on federal subsidies. That's when the remilitarization began.
И у нас есть справедливое право откровенно спросить, против кого это расширение? И что стало с теми заверениями, которые давались западными партнерами после распуска Варшавского договора?
NATO was expanding and the United States was creeping in. They had their eyes on this field in northern Poland, where they were planning to deploy 10 interceptors. This would strengthen Europe's air defense, mostly from missiles coming from Kaliningrad, and they were debating the construction of a radar station here in the Czech Republic. But over this same period, Russia more than tripled its defense spending, putting much of Central and Eastern Europe on edge. Russia says it responded to NATO expansion, and NATO said it responded to Russia's militarization.
Russia is flexing its muscles on land as well. These are large-scale military operations underway in the southern parts of the country.
In Russia, President Vladimir Putin looked on as the army carried out its biggest military exercise since Soviet times.
Russia and Belarus organized large-scale military exercises as a show of force, and they started deploying ballistic missiles in Kaliningrad with a range of 600 kilometers, as well as Russia's most advanced air defense systems.
Russian Defense Ministry confirmed deployment of the missile. The Iskander is a tactical ballistic missile system.
NATO, in response to Russia's aggression in Ukraine, organized the largest military exercise in over a decade.
NATO is flexing its muscles with Operation Trident Juncture. It's the biggest military exercise in more than a decade.
Nearly 40,000 1,000 soldiers took part, and afterwards they deployed battalions on its eastern flank. The US in Poland, Germany in Lithuania, Canada in Latvia, and the UK in Estonia. These battalions each consisted of several hundred soldiers from different NATO countries. The idea was that an attack on one of these countries would automatically involve multiple NATO states. They also increased their response force from 13,000 to 40,000 troops, and they created 8 new headquarters to improve their regional command structure. Russia escalated and NATO escalated, and both said that they were responding to the other. While Kaliningrad sits at the center of these tensions. It served as a Cold War military outpost, and especially after Finland and Sweden joined NATO, it became increasingly disconnected from the Russian mainland. And that's where we are today. Kaliningrad has an area of just 15,000 square kilometers, which is roughly the size of Hawaii, and about 1 million people live here. But if you look at the census data, it looks a little bit odd, so take a look at this. It confirms 1 million inhabitants, and less than half of them live in the main city, but the second largest city has fewer than 40,000 inhabitants. So where do all of these people live? The oblast depends on federal subsidies and the military. The biggest tax contributor is manufacturing, and particularly Avtotor. They were founded in the mid-1990s, and in 2021 were responsible for 52% of all taxes that were collected in Kaliningrad that year. They are exporting their cars through these ports and through this rail line that connects Kaliningrad to the rest of Russia. In these ports, Avtotar's cars account for 70% of all container traffic, and over these rails, 42% of all cargo. But this imploded at the start of the war. Car production declined 66% in the first year and 37% in the subsequent year. This had a ripple effect across all sectors of the economy. This made Kaliningrad even more dependent on the federal government. They have a limited domestic economy, and international sanctions also limit their access to foreign markets. So I did some further digging, and it turns out that hundreds of thousands of people live in small rural communities. See this table here. There are over 1,000 tiny settlements with populations ranging from 1 to 2,000. So most people in Kaliningrad live in such small villages and rural settlements. For those living in the city, the military is always nearby. Several major units are headquartered here, including the Baltic Fleet. But also, in these smaller villages with 10 to 40,000 inhabitants, the military is always nearby. Their presence can always be felt, and the region's infrastructure is designed to serve the military to the fullest extent. But there's one thing that doesn't appear on these maps, and that is where they store their nuclear weapons.
President Vladimir Putin has warned the West that Russia could use nuclear weapons if it was struck with conventional missiles.
This is how it works. The United States and Russia have by far the most nuclear warheads. A portion of US warheads is stored in Europe, in all these locations in the Netherlands, Italy, and Turkey. Russia officially stores its nuclear weapons at just 12 central sites, but this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So the official narrative is that Russia has all these nuclear weapons in 12 central locations, but there are another 34 secret bases that we know about. These are smaller, and they are spread across the country, as well as at least one base in Belarus. The claim is that tactical warheads remain in central storage during peacetime, and are only moved during threatening periods or during a crisis. This means that there are officially no nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad, but that's probably not true. Russia strongly opposes inspections of its storage sites and says that it will only resume talks if the US removes its nuclear weapons from Europe. Most experts agree that Kaliningrad most likely does have storage sites for nuclear weapons, and there are 5 secret bases that are now all over the news. These bases are in the high north, in Belarus, and in Kaliningrad, and an analysis of satellite imagery shows that they're undergoing large-scale renovations. These sites have covered guard posts, triple-layer fencing, bunkers, and standardized Russian nuclear engineering buildings. These are all telltale signs that they can be used to store nuclear weapons. The site that is most suspected is in Kaliningrad. Here, to be more precise, a hardened bunker was excavated and reburied. New fences have appeared, and they built a guardhouse. It is just one of several large-scale upgrades across Russia's nuclear infrastructure, which signals that Russia is preparing for long-term nuclear competition. And similarly, NATO is modernizing its nuclear weapons and delivery systems with purchases of new aircrafts, submarines, and by modernizing its bases in Eastern Europe. This is yet another way in which we're taking a step back towards a new era of Cold War tensions. And once again, Kaliningrad sits at the center of it all. This region still symbolizes Russian reach into Europe and the Baltic states in particular. And that grand vision of turning Kaliningrad into a bridge of cooperation is now farther away than ever before. Thanks again to Call of War for sponsoring this video. Click on my link in the pinned comment or description to get a late Christmas crate with the free Marines unit worth $25 for free to get you started on building your own empire today. So we put a lot of time and money and energy into writing and researching and editing these videos. And if you're looking for a way that is absolutely free to help us out, consider showing some positive engagement. Write a short comment in the comment section. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All of these are things that help us much more than you might think. And after you're done with that, here are 2 more videos that you can consider for your next watch.